Jake had made the decision to move his mother into our home without considering my opinion. He left all the preparations for the move to me. When he asked if my mom was all settled in, I replied, "Yes, she's settled. I've just sent all my stuff back to my parents' place." Jake's reaction showed his surprise. He clearly hadn't expected me to move back to my parents' home. After the initial shock, a cynical laugh escaped him, and he looked at me disdainfully. "What are you talking about, Ashley? You can't possibly live on your own." Little did Jake know about my determination and how much I've been earning lately. He assumed that spending all day in front of a screen meant I couldn't manage on my own. But he was wrong. I was resolved to prove him otherwise and demonstrate my independence. I wasn't about to ask for his help. My name is Ashley, and I'm 46 years old. Jake and I have been married for about 20 years with no children between us. My husband, an elite banker, has a penchant for fussing over details. Perhaps due to his profession or his personality, he still dotes on his 56-year-old mother. My mother-in-law lived alone in a house some distance from us. My father-in-law passed away 3 years ago, leaving Jake as her only child. She often urged Jake to give her a grandchild soon, but Jake didn't want children. Though he played the dutiful son in front of his mother, telling her he wanted children too, he privately admitted he found the idea of having children a hassle. At our age, having a child would be risky, so we eventually abandoned the idea. Besides, deep down, I realized I didn't want a child with Jake. My apprehension dated back to when I first met Jake's mother. She warned me, "Hey Ashley, I don't think you're a good match for Jake. The banker's wife should be more polished. This won't last long." She whispered this so Jake wouldn't hear, but in front of him, she would say things like, "As long as Jake is happy, that's all that matters." Dealing with two-faced people like her was exhausting, and her duplicity extended to the issue of us not having children. "I want to see my grandchild soon. When will you give me one?" Jake's mother asked. "I know, Mom. I'm sorry, but Ashley doesn't want any," Jake would say, shifting the blame onto me. His constant deflection grated on me, especially since he was the one who didn't want children in the first place. I couldn't help but wonder if his devotion to his mother was why he behaved this way, prioritizing her opinions over mine. He never stood up for me, his wife. "Why did he want children, Ashley?" she would ask, turning the blame on me. "It's because she thinks it's a hassle," Jake would say, leaving me looking cold-hearted. "Jake, why are you with her if she doesn't want children? You're so kind to put up with this." "Ashley, you should be grateful Jake supports you," his mother would chide me, while they both laughed at my expense. Their ridicule extended to my own mother as well. "Ashley is a terrible person, so her upbringing must have been just as bad," they would say, mocking my background. "Like mother, like daughter, right?" Jake's resemblance to his mother was evident, but I could hardly stand them speaking ill of my mom. I should have defended her, but my focus was on taking care of my father-in-law. My responsibilities took priority. He suffered from a rare disease that caused his muscles to stiffen gradually. He needed assistance with eating and using the bathroom, so I managed his care as best as I could. While I was there, I wasn't sure if my mother-in-law tended to him or if they relied on a caretaker. Given her nature, I suspected they had a caretaker coming by instead. I couldn't imagine my mother-in-law caring for my father-in-law on her own. If she had any compassion, she wouldn't have left me to handle all the care by myself, especially when she knew I couldn't protest. Meanwhile, Jake was feeding her all sorts of lies about me. "I've reached my breaking point. I can't continue this marriage any longer. I can't believe I've put up with this for so long." Beyond the mistreatment I've shared so far, there were countless other unpleasant experiences they subjected me to. Even when my father-in-law passed away, my mother-in-law's reaction was disturbing. "Ah, it's finally over. We won't have to waste our money anymore, and I can finally relax," she said, showing no remorse. Those are not the words you'd expect from someone who'd spent years with her husband, especially since I was the one providing care for him. Her comments about money being wasted hinted that she may have hired a caretaker after all. This lack of empathy only reinforced my decision to distance myself from her and Jake. Recently, Jake spoke to me about his mother, mentioning that she's showing signs of dementia. When I asked him how serious it was, he said she was starting to forget things more frequently. It seemed she might be in the early stages of dementia. I suggested that it might be better for my mother-in-law to move into a nursing home where she could receive professional care. but Jake dismissed my idea with annoyance. "Don't you have any empathy? You live here, so you can take care of her," he declared. I couldn't believe he was being so dismissive. I had my own responsibilities, and taking care of his mother wasn't something I wanted to do, especially after all she put me through. He labeled me as unpleasant and reiterated that his mother would live with us, leaving no room for objections. It was clear he had no intention of listening to my perspective, so I had to adapt to the situation. I simply said, "Understood," and started preparing for my mother-in-law's move. I made several trips between her house and ours in my small car, each journey taking an hour one way. It was exhausting and expensive, as I was covering the cost of gas myself. Though I could have asked a friend for help, I worried Jake's pride would lead him to anger if he found out. I figured he'd be embarrassed if others knew he was making me handle all the preparations for his mother's move. So I decided against asking for assistance. After several days of moving my mother-in-law's belongings, I began moving my own things to my parents' house. When my parents asked what happened, I gave them a brief explanation. They comforted me, saying I had been through a lot and had done well. Their encouragement gave me the strength to move forward. Summoning up the courage, I returned to our house to tie up loose ends. My parents insisted I didn't have to go back, but I couldn't bear leaving things unfinished. With a smile, I left my parents' house and headed home. However, upon arriving, Jake's fury greeted me. "Where have you been? You didn't even prepare dinner," he barked. Ignoring his outburst, I calmly replied, "I'll do it now. It's none of your business where I go." Jake's anger escalated, resorting to his usual tactic of yelling, "Who do you think is providing for you?" Initially, I couldn't argue against his point, as I relied on him financially. But things had changed. Jake didn't realize I'd been working too. To him, it probably seemed like I spent all day on my phone or computer. Disregarding his shouting, I asked, "So, what do you want to eat?" This only fueled his anger further. However, I was no longer willing to bend to his every demand. In the past, I would have done anything to pacify him, but I'd reached my limit. Enough, I thought to myself. Jake, sensing my newfound resolve, declared, "I can't eat with you. It'll taste terrible. I'll go eat outside." With that, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. In the past, I would have panicked, but not anymore. In the past, I would have rushed out in tears to find him, giving him exactly what he wanted. But I wasn't that person anymore. Instead, I thought, if I don't have to prepare dinner, that's a win. I grabbed my car keys to go out and get some food. But when I opened the door, I found Jake standing there. "Why didn't you come after me?" he demanded. I sighed, weary of his behavior. "You were the one who said a meal with me would be unappetizing, so why would I chase after you?" I responded, frowning as I waited for him to understand. He babbled some nonsense about how I usually followed him when he stormed off. We went back inside, but Jake continued sulking like a child, behavior unbefitting a 56-year-old man. It was frankly repugnant. When I remained silent, Jake continued in his foul mood. "Did you finish moving my mom?" Jake had made the decision to move his mother in without consulting me, and he left me to handle all the arrangements. "Yes, I finished," I replied, "and I've also moved my belongings to my parents' house." He seemed taken aback, not expecting me to take such a step. He gave me a condescending smirk. "What are you saying? You can't live on your own. You spend all your time on your phone or computer. You can't manage without me." "Don't be ridiculous," I countered. "I can absolutely live on my own, and I'll prove it to you. You may not realize it, but I can support myself just fine." Jake dismissed my confidence. "That's an obvious lie. Why bother telling it?" I held my ground. "What makes you think it's a lie?" Jake continued his belittling tone. "You've only been able to live because of me. If I'm not around, you wouldn't last a single day because you can't make money." I couldn't understand why Jake doubted my ability to earn money, but I didn't press the point. Instead, I simply said, "Even if I explained it to you, you wouldn't believe me. I'm going back to my parents' house." Jake responded, "If you're going back to your parents' house, we should get divorced. Don't come running back in tears later. Do whatever you want, but I predict you'll regret the divorce within 3 days and come back crying." "That's fine," I replied, calmly taking the divorce papers Jake had prepared. "Please sign here." Jake signed the papers with an arrogant smile, but I just glared at him, grabbed the papers, and left for my parents' house. Jake seemed surprised that I followed through, and he called me several times, but I ignored him. However, after 2 days of silence, Jake started calling again. At first, I didn't answer, fearing he might be abusive. But then a voicemail from Jake made me listen. "Ashley, are you upset? I'll forgive you. Just come back," he said. The audacity of his words angered me. He had been the one to propose divorce, and yet he expected me to seek forgiveness from him. I knew I would never forgive him. Determined to confront him, I resolved to answer his next call. However, despite my decision, Jake didn't contact me again for a while. I assumed he had given up, but then 2 weeks after his voicemail, the phone rang. "Hello," I answered. "Ashley," Jake said, sobbing on the other end of the line. I was taken aback, wondering why a grown man was crying. I remained silent, but then I heard a strange scream from behind Jake. At the same time, he shouted, "Stop it, Mom." It was clear to me that his mother's dementia had escalated beyond his control. "Ashley, it's my fault. Please come back," he pleaded. "I don't know what you're talking about," I replied. "I left so you can go back." "I don't want to come back." "Please," he insisted. "I can't handle my mother with dementia and work at the same time. You must be struggling without my money." "I'm not struggling, and I have no desire to return," I said firmly. "We're a couple, right? Couples help each other." "Yes, they do, but we are no longer a couple." "We are strangers now," I countered. Jake protested, "I'm in so much trouble." "But when I was suffering, you didn't help me. You and your mother just laughed at me." "Okay, fine, I'll pay you." "How much do you want to look after my mom?" "I'll pay. You'll come, right?" "Do you really think you can buy my help?" I retorted. "Besides, I earn more than you now, Jake." "What?" he asked, shocked. I had never told him because Jake was the type to disapprove of me working. When I had mentioned wanting a part-time job, he had erupted in anger. "Women should only do housework at home. It's shameful to work outside. It makes me look like I don't earn enough." Because of Jake's pride, I had to work in secret. I worked hard to earn money in ways Jake wouldn't discover. "What job were you doing behind my back?" he asked. "Stock trading," I replied. "A friend taught me how to do it, and I've been successful. Now I'm a professional trader, so you don't have to worry. I can support myself." "Please come back," he pleaded. "Why don't you take care of your beloved mother yourself? You're the one who suggested the divorce." "You actually filed the divorce papers," he said, sounding surprised. "Of course I did. I went to file them right away," I said. "If you have anything to say, please do it through a lawyer." At my cold response, Jake kept repeating, "I didn't really mean to divorce you. Please come back." But I ended the conversation, saying I was busy and hanging up. I reached out to a friend who introduced me to a lawyer, who agreed to represent me right away. From then on, all communication with Jake was done through the lawyer. The process took some time, but I managed to finalize the divorce. According to my lawyer, Jake's situation worsened. My mother-in-law's wandering habits had intensified, and she often snuck out at night and dined and dashed at convenience stores. She had been banned from numerous places, and at home, she smeared filth on the walls and ate things she shouldn't, causing chaos. Her shrill screams led to frequent complaints from neighbors and regular visits from the police. Despite the severity of the situation, Jake refused to use day services for his mother, citing his pride. "People might think I'm a bad son if I leave my mother with a day service. It's shameful. It's not something a capable man like me should do. Everything would be fine if Ashley just came back." As I heard about Jake's downward spiral, I learned he had become a shadow of his former self. His once robust frame was now thin and hollow-eyed, likely from lack of sleep. His ghost-like appearance had become the subject of neighborhood gossip. Upon hearing this, I thought to myself that it served him right, but I kept my thoughts to myself and thanked the lawyer. As for me, I moved to the top floor of a high-rise apartment with my parents. Jake had always looked down on them, but I was grateful to live in such a beautiful place with them. Now that I was finally free, I enjoyed my days appreciating the stunning views and living a happy